I still remember the night everything changed for me. It wasn't a stormy night like in the old stories. No lightning bolts striking across the sky. No thunder announcing doom. It was just quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you hear your own heartbeat, steady but heavy, echoing against the silence. My name is Clara Winslow, and until that day, I thought I knew who my parents were. A loving couple who raised me in a small town in Vermont, who worked hard, who never seemed to care much about wealth or luxury. My father, Harold, ran a small hardware store that barely kept us afloat. My mother, Beatrice, was a schoolteacher, strict but caring. We weren't rich, but we had what mattered, at least that's what I believed. I had one older brother, Marcus, 5 years older than me. He was always the golden child, confident, charming, the kind of person people gravitated toward. Growing up, I was always compared to him. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" That was a line I heard more than once from teachers, relatives, even from my parents when they thought I wasn't trying hard enough. But I loved him anyway. He was my brother. Or at least I thought he was. The night everything changed started simply enough. My parents had passed away just 3 weeks earlier in a car accident. Losing them was a blow that shook me to my core. Their deaths left me and Marcus in a haze of grief. We buried them together, side by side, in the little cemetery near the church where they had been married. After the funeral, Marcus and I barely spoke. He returned to his apartment in Boston, and I stayed behind in the old family home. I couldn't bring myself to leave. The house still smelled like them. My mother's perfume clung to the hallway. My father's work boots sat by the back door. Every corner of the house whispered their absence. And in that silence I wandered, sometimes late at night, opening closets, drawers, anything just to feel closer to them. That's how I found it. It was an old wooden box hidden beneath the loose floorboard in my father's study. I would never have found it if I hadn't dropped one of his old fountain pens and watched it roll toward the corner. When I lifted the board, my fingers brushed against the box, dusty, locked, forgotten. I don't know why, but my heart raced as I pulled it out. Maybe I thought it was nothing, just old papers or bills. But when I managed to pry it open, what I found inside made my world collapse. There it was, a will. A secret will, dated only 2 years ago. And it wasn't the same one the lawyer had read to us after the funeral. In the official will, everything was simple. The house, the store, their savings, all split evenly between me and Marcus. That's what I expected, what I accepted without question. But this will was different. In this document, everything was left to me. The house, the business, the savings. Marcus's name wasn't even mentioned. At the bottom, both of my parents' signatures glared up at me, along with the name of a witness I didn't recognize. I sat there on the floor of the study, my hands trembling, my breath caught in my throat. Why would they do this? Why would they cut Marcus out completely? I didn't want to believe it. My parents weren't cruel people. They loved us both, or at least I thought they did. But the longer I stared at those pages, the more I realized this wasn't some mistake. This was deliberate. And then came the anger. Not at Marcus, not at myself, but at them. At my parents. How could they hide something like this? How could they leave me with this secret, knowing it would tear us apart? I should have stopped there. I should have burned the paper, locked it back in the box, and buried it beneath the floor where I found it. But curiosity is a dangerous thing, and something inside me whispered that this will was just the beginning, that there was more they had hidden. Over the next few days, I searched every corner of the house, drawers, closets, boxes in the attic, and piece by piece, I began to uncover a story I was never supposed to know. Letters, bank statements, photographs, all of them pointing to the same chilling truth. My parents had secrets, big ones. The money they had, it wasn't just from the store or my mother's teaching salary. There were deposits, large ones, from a company I had never heard of. Old photos showed my father standing next to a man I didn't recognize, shaking hands outside some corporate building. But the letters were the worst. Letters addressed to my mother, written in a careful, elegant hand. Letters signed by someone named Silas Blackwood. I had never heard the name before, but as I read those letters, I felt the ground slipping from beneath me. They spoke of promises, of debts repaid, of loyalty that ran deeper than blood. And one line in particular froze my blood. Beatrice, when the time comes, make sure Clara receives what is rightfully hers. Marcus cannot be trusted. He is not like her. He is not one of us. I read that line again and again, unable to breathe. Not one of us. What did that mean? I wanted answers, but answers come at a price. And I didn't realize until much later that opening that box had set me on a path I couldn't turn back from. The first time I confronted Marcus about the will, he laughed. A sharp, bitter laugh that chilled me. "Clara, you can't be serious," he said, tossing his glass of whiskey onto the table. "A secret will? Hidden under the floorboards? Do you hear how crazy that sounds?" "I'm not making this up, Marcus," I snapped, pulling the papers from my bag and spreading them out in front of him. Look at their signatures. This is real." His smile faltered. For a moment, just a moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Fear, or maybe anger. He grabbed the papers, scanning them quickly, his jaw tightening. "This doesn't mean anything," he said finally, shoving them back at me. "It's probably a draft. Something they wrote and then decided against. The official will is the only one that matters, and it says we split everything evenly. End of story." But it wasn't the end, because deep down I knew he was lying. He wasn't surprised by the will, he was threatened by it. And when I asked him if he knew the name Silas Blackwood, his face went pale. That was the moment I realized Marcus wasn't just hiding something, he was part of it. From that night on, things changed between us. My brother, the golden child, the one I had admired my whole life, became a stranger. He called less. He stopped visiting. And when he did, his eyes were cold, calculating, as if weighing whether I was a threat. And maybe I was. Because the more I dug, the more I uncovered. I discovered that Silas Blackwood was once a powerful businessman in New York. A man with ties to old money, politics, and corporations I couldn't even begin to understand. But he had disappeared years ago, vanishing from the public eye without explanation. Somehow, my parents were connected to him, and somehow I was too. The final piece came one evening when I was going through my mother's jewelry box. Hidden beneath the velvet lining was a small envelope. Inside, a single photograph. It showed my mother, younger, standing beside Silas Blackwood. In her arms was a baby girl, me. I dropped the photo, my hand shaking. My mind screamed with questions, but only one thought cut through the noise. Marcus wasn't my father's son, and I wasn't my mother's daughter. Not completely. I was Blackwood's, and my parents had spent their lives hiding that truth. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every memory, every conversation, every moment of my childhood. The pieces started to fit together. The favoritism toward Marcus, the constant comparisons, the sense that I was different, that I never quite belonged. They had raised me with love, yes, but they had also raised me with lies. And when I finally drifted into sleep, I dreamed of my parents' faces, smiling but twisted, their lips moving silently as if mocking me. When I woke, my pillow was wet with tears. But by morning, my grief had hardened into something else, something darker. Marcus had known. He had known all along. And if he thought he could bury the truth, if he thought he could take what was rightfully mine, he was wrong. Because I was done being the quiet one, the overlooked one, the obedient daughter. It was my turn to fight back, and I would use every secret, every lie, every hidden truth to destroy him. The morning sunlight spilled across the worn wooden floors of the Winslow house, but it felt cold, lifeless. I stood by the window, my arms crossed tightly across my chest, watching the empty street outside. Somewhere deep in my stomach, I felt the knot twist tighter and tighter. Marcus had known. He had always known. That realization was a poison, burning through every memory I had of him. My phone buzzed on the table. I glanced at it. A text from Marcus. "We need to talk. Tonight. Don't tell anyone." I stared at the words, my hand trembling slightly. He wasn't the type to send cryptic messages. Marcus had always been direct, confident, dismissive even. This wasn't him. This was something else. Something darker. I almost didn't go. Every instinct screamed at me to stay away. But curiosity gnawed at me stronger than fear. If he wanted to talk, it meant he knew I was digging deeper. It meant he was afraid. That evening, I drove to his apartment in Boston. The city lights glowed against the night sky as I pulled into the underground garage, my heart hammering in my chest. His apartment was sleek, expensive, so different from the modest home we grew up in. I knocked once, and the door swung open. Marcus stood there, his face shadowed, his jaw clenched tight. "Clara!" he said flatly, stepping aside to let me in. The apartment smelled of expensive cologne and whiskey. Papers were scattered across the coffee table, along with an empty glass and a half-drained bottle. He didn't offer me a drink. He didn't even sit down. He just stood there watching me. "You shouldn't have gone digging," he said finally. My stomach dropped. "So you do know about the will? About Silas Blackwood?" His expression hardened, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was standing across from a stranger. "Of course I know," he said, his voice low, almost venomous. "You think our parents never told me? You think I haven't lived with this truth for years while you floated around in your perfect little bubble?" I blinked at him, shocked. Perfect little bubble? Marcus! I was the one who was always second best. The one they compared to you. The one they ignored. "Exactly," he cut me off sharply, his eyes blazing. "They ignored you because they didn't want you to know who you really are. They wanted to protect you from it. Me. I had to live with the truth. I had to carry it." His words struck me like a slap. My voice trembled when I asked, "What truth?" He laughed bitterly, running a hand through his hair. "That you're not one of us, Clara. That you're Silas Blackwood's daughter. That you're the reason they risked everything. Our parents, Harold and Beatrice, spent their entire lives hiding you, protecting you from the people who wanted you gone. And me? I had to play along. I had to be the dutiful son while you got everything handed to you in secret." My chest tightened. His words cut deep. But underneath the anger, I could hear something else. Resentment. Decades of it, festering in silence. "They didn't hand me anything," I whispered. "They lied to me, just like they lied to you." He stepped closer, his face inches from mine. "Don't you get it? That will. Everything being left to you, it wasn't love. It wasn't fairness. It was a command from Blackwood. You were chosen, Clara, and I was nothing more than a shadow standing in your way. The air between us was electric, dangerous. I could feel the hatred radiating from him, years of jealousy and bitterness boiling to the surface. I swallowed hard, my hands trembling. "What do you want from me, Marcus?" His lips curled into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I want what's mine. I want you to walk away. Give me the house, the store, the money. All of it. You don't deserve it. You don't even belong to this family." The audacity of his words snapped something inside me. My fear ignited into anger. "No," I said firmly, my voice steady. "For once in my life, I'm not walking away. I'm not letting you take what's mine. You may have been their golden child, but you're not going to steal this from me." His eyes darkened, and for a long moment neither of us spoke. Then, without another word, he turned and poured himself another drink. "This isn't over," he muttered, his back to me. And I knew he meant it. That night, as I drove home, my mind raced. Marcus wasn't just angry. He was dangerous. He had lived his entire life believing he was entitled to everything. And now, for the first time, it was slipping through his fingers. But something he said stuck with me. "Our parents risked everything to protect you." Protect me from what? Or from who? I needed answers. Real answers. And I had only one name that could give them to me. Silas Blackwood. Over the next week, I buried myself in research. Blackwood had been a titan of industry in the 1980s, a ruthless businessman with a reputation for swallowing smaller companies whole. His name appeared in old newspapers, glossy magazine covers, and corporate records. But then, sometime in the mid-90s, he disappeared. No obituary, no public statement. Just gone. The more I dug, the stranger it became. Rumors whispered of scandals, of secret families, of enemies in high places. Some said he fled the country. Others believed he was killed. But nothing was certain. And then, late one night, while scrolling through an old online archive, I found it. An article dated 25 years ago. The headline read, "Business mogul Silas Blackwood connected to secret child in Vermont." My heart stopped. The article was vague, speculative, but it mentioned a local schoolteacher named Beatrice Winslow. A photograph accompanied it, my mother standing outside the very house I now lived in, and in her arms a baby, me. I stared at the grainy black and white image, my chest tightening. This was it, proof that the world had known, or at least suspected, all along. My parents must have fought hard to bury this, to keep me safe from the storm it would unleash. But if this article existed, then Marcus had been right about one thing. I wasn't safe. Not then. Not now. 2 days later, I returned to the family home after running errands in town. As I pushed the door open, a chill ran down my spine. Something was off. The lights were on, though I had turned them off before leaving. The faint smell of cologne lingered in the air, Marcus's cologne. My pulse quickened as I stepped into the living room. Drawers were pulled open, papers scattered across the floor. Someone had been searching. "Marcus!" I called out, my voice trembling. No answer. I moved cautiously through the house, every creak of the floorboards echoing in my ears. When I reached my father's study, I froze. The wooden box, the one that had held the will, was gone. Panic surged through me. He had been here. He had taken it. I spun around, and that's when I saw him. Marcus stood in the doorway, his expression cold, the box tucked under his arm. "You should have left it where you found it," he said quietly. "Marcus, please," I begged, my throat tight. "That will. It proves everything. Don't do this." He shook his head slowly. "No, Clara. It proves nothing. All it does is destroy what little we had left. I won't let you use it against me." He moved closer, and instinctively I stepped back. My heart pounded so loudly I thought it would burst from my chest. "I don't want to fight you," I whispered. "But I do," he hissed. The tension between us snapped like a taut wire. I lunged for the box, but he was faster, shoving me back against the desk. Pain shot through my side as I hit the wood, gasping for breath. For a moment, I saw the brother I had grown up with, the boy who had taught me to ride a bike, who had stood up for me in school. But his eyes now were wild, desperate. "This is my life, Clara," he shouted. "Everything I've worked for, everything I've sacrificed, it's all slipping away because of you." Tears stung my eyes, but my voice was steel. "No, Marcus, it's slipping away because of the truth." We struggled, the box clattering to the floor. Papers spilled everywhere. The will fluttered out, landing between us. His gaze locked on it, and for a split second his grip loosened. That was all I needed. I shoved him hard, sending him stumbling back. I grabbed the papers and clutched them to my chest, my breath ragged. "Get out," I whispered. He froze, his chest heaving, his eyes burning with rage. Then, slowly, he straightened his shirt, his lips curling into a chilling smile. "This isn't over, Clara," he said softly. "Not by a long shot." And with that, he turned and walked out, leaving me shaking in the wreckage of our family home. That night, I couldn't stop trembling. I locked every door, every window, but it wasn't enough. The house felt haunted now, not by ghosts, but by secrets, by the growing war between me and Marcus. And as I sat there, clutching the will in my hands, I realized something that made my blood run cold. If Marcus was willing to fight me this hard, if he was willing to break into the house, to threaten me, to nearly hurt me, then he wouldn't stop. Not until one of us was destroyed. And for the first time in my life, I knew I had to fight back. Not just to protect the will, not just to protect the truth, but to protect myself. Because Marcus wasn't my brother anymore. He was my enemy. The silence after Marcus's outburst lingered like a thick fog. Clara felt the weight of every eye in the room. Her brother's glare sharp as a blade, her parents' silence heavy with shame, and Silas's quiet watchfulness in the corner. For a moment, she couldn't breathe, the enormity of what had just been revealed pressing down on her chest. Marcus broke the stillness with a bitter laugh. "So that's it, isn't it? Clara, the forgotten daughter, suddenly elevated above me. Everything I've worked for, every sacrifice I've made meaningless because of a scrap of paper hidden in Father's study." Clara steadied herself, refusing to let his venom pierce through her. "It wasn't me who hid the will, Marcus. It was our parents. They made this decision because they knew the truth of who we are. You've shown them nothing but resentment and greed." "Greed?" Marcus snapped, his face darkening. "Do you have any idea what I've done to keep this family's name intact? The debts I covered, the alliances I forged? You think I enjoyed it? You think I wanted to grovel to investors, to bend my life around Father's legacy while you wandered free, unburdened?" Harold's voice, hoarse with guilt, cut in. "Enough, Marcus. We placed too much on your shoulders. We thought Clara would never be strong enough to bear it. But we were wrong. She has the heart of this family. She has the resilience we failed to see." Marcus's jaw tightened, his eyes glistening with something that wasn't just anger, it was hurt. "And now you choose her. After everything." Clara felt her own heart twist. She wanted to reach out, to remind him they were still siblings, still bound by something deeper than inheritance. But she knew the bitterness had carved too deep into him. Beatrice finally spoke, her voice trembling but resolute. "We hid the will not to punish you, Marcus, but to protect you from yourself. Power has consumed you. We feared what it would do if you held everything." Marcus's fists clenched at his sides. "So you strip me of it instead? Leave me with nothing?" "No," Clara said softly but firmly. "You're not left with nothing. You still have us if you choose to. But I won't let you destroy me to soothe your pride. I will carry our parents' wishes, whether you stand with me or against me." The words hung in the air like a gauntlet thrown. Silas finally stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. "The truth has been revealed, and the will stands. What happens next is no longer about papers and property, it's about choices. Marcus, you can cling to bitterness, or you can find redemption. Clara, you can lead with vengeance or with mercy. The Winslow name will either fracture here or find strength in unity." Clara's breath caught. She realized this was the moment her entire journey had led to, not simply inheriting a fortune, but deciding what to do with it. She looked at Marcus, who stood rigid, trembling with barely contained rage. "Marcus," she said quietly, stepping closer, "I don't want war with you, but if you force my hand, I'll fight back with everything father and mother entrusted to me. Make your choice." For a heartbeat, she thought she saw a crack in his armor, a flicker of the boy he once was, her brother who had laughed with her in the orchard, who had protected her from childhood bullies. But the flicker was gone as quickly as it came. "I will never bow to you," Marcus spat, his voice low and venomous. "If it's war you want, you'll have it." He stormed out of the room, the echo of his footsteps lingering like a threat. Clara felt her knees weaken, but she steadied herself. "Then so be it," she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. The days that followed were a storm. Marcus moved quickly, rallying allies among the board members of the family business, spreading whispers that Clara was unfit, that she had manipulated their parents. He painted her as a usurper, a fraud. But Clara refused to be crushed. With Silas's guidance, she began asserting control. She called meetings, laid out visions for the company that spoke not of greed, but of innovation, sustainability, and legacy. She spoke with conviction, her voice no longer hesitant, but strong, echoing with the weight of truth. Some were skeptical, but many were moved. They had seen enough of Marcus's ruthless ambition. Clara offered something different, something the Winslow name hadn't seen in years. Harold and Beatrice stood by her side, their regret for past mistakes fueling their support. "You carry the best of us," Harold told her one evening, his voice breaking. "Don't doubt that again." Still, Marcus was relentless. He launched legal challenges, trying to discredit the will. He stirred the press, leaking half-truths and fabrications. For every step Clara took forward, he threw obstacles in her path. Yet, with every battle, Clara grew stronger. The timid woman who had once doubted her place in the family was gone. In her place stood a leader forged in fire, her determination sharpened by betrayal. The final confrontation came sooner than expected. It was during the annual shareholders' gathering, the grand hall filled with powerful figures who had once bowed to Harold and Marcus alike. Now all eyes turned to Clara. Marcus was there, his expression cold, his voice dripping with venom as he made his case. "Clara Winslow is unfit. She hides behind sentiment and illusions. This family's empire will crumble under her naive ideals. She stole what should have been mine." Clara rose, her presence calm but commanding. "I stole nothing. The truth was buried because our parents feared what power would do to you, Marcus. And you've proven them right. Look at you, clawing, scheming, tearing down your own blood for the sake of pride. That is not leadership. That is destruction." Gasps rippled through the room. Marcus's face twisted with fury. "You dare!" "Yes, I dare!" Clara cut him off, her voice ringing with steel. "Because leadership isn't about control. It isn't about feeding greed or silencing others. It's about vision, resilience, and trust. Our father saw it. Our mother saw it. And today, everyone here will see it too." She unveiled her plan, an ambitious restructuring of the company, focusing on innovation, ethical practices, and long-term prosperity. She spoke not as a frightened heir, but as a leader who had walked through fire and emerged unbroken. The hall erupted in applause. Marcus, cornered, tried one last desperate strike. "You think this is over? You think applause makes you strong? I will not stop until I tear you down." Clara met his eyes unflinching. "Then you will spend your life chasing a ghost, Marcus, because I am done being your victim. From this moment on, I am the future of this family." The vote was called. One by one, hands rose in Clara's favor. The tide had turned, decisively and irrevocably. Marcus's face drained of color as he realized he had lost. When the meeting ended, he stormed out, his threats echoing behind him. But Clara no longer feared him. She had faced his wrath, his betrayal, and his schemes, and she had triumphed. Harold and Beatrice embraced her, tears in their eyes. "We should have trusted you sooner," Beatrice whispered. "You are everything we hoped for and more." Silas placed a hand on her shoulder. "The storm isn't over, Clara. Marcus will linger like a shadow. But remember, shadows only exist where light shines. Keep shining." Clara smiled faintly, the weight of her journey pressing down on her, but also lifting her higher than she had ever imagined. She had discovered a secret that had changed her entire life, but the true transformation had come from within. She was no longer just Clara Winslow, the overlooked daughter. She was Clara Winslow, the rightful heir, the leader, the survivor. And though the road ahead would not be easy, she would walk it with unyielding strength. Because revenge had given her fire, but resilience had given her wings. And with those wings she would soar.